Hey guys, welcome back for another Bakerville Sexy Time series. This series, we're talking about the big lifts: back squat, deadlift, press, bench press, all the big ones that may show up in your programming at some point. If you have a pretty thorough program, one of these is going to be showing up most likely, and it's good to be prepped for all of them. The mobility that I'm going to show you is good for any instance, but this video and this video series is going to specifically talk about this mobility in relation to lifting itself. This video is about the deadlift. The deadlift is an incredibly powerful lift. It's probably where you're moving the absolute most weight your body's capable of, because all it is picking weight up from the ground to a standing position and then bringing it back to the ground with good form, flat back, engaging the glutes, engaging the hamstrings. But you're moving a lot of weight if done properly. It's also a lift where people can really get hurt because you can move so much weight, and people really want to be able to move a lot of weight because it's impressive. You usually wind up maybe doing a little bit more than you can and compromising in form in order to get there. There's a way to prep for that, and mobility will definitely help get you there. This video is going to talk a lot about the areas that I like to prep both before and after a deadlift session. And obviously the first thing we want to start with is the glutes. Those are the big movers right there. Those are your butt muscles right back there. It's important that these are engaged properly during the deadlift. What most of us have though are these flat, compacted, pancake-like muscle fibers in our butt because we sit so much. So using a foam roller or a lacrosse ball can help to break that up and get those tissues mobile and moving again. It can help things like nerve pain in your hips and your glutes and your legs as well. So if you've got some of that, this may show you some benefit there too. But it's definitely going to help your deadlift. So what I've done, I've sat up on my foam roller. You don't have to cross the leg over the knee. I can just start right here and roll and lean to the side. I personally like to do this because it opens up a little bit more tissue and it puts a little bit more weight on this side. And then I just roll up and down. I know my right side in particular, I always tend to feel a little bit of nerve pain in there. I know that's because my nerves are getting bound up in the muscles themselves. So it's always good to hit this. It keeps it loose, keeps it pliable. That's what we really need. So I would do that for a minute or two on this side, and then I'll switch and go to the other. If you want to get really daring, you can take your lacrosse ball and do the exact same thing. Might have to be a little bit more ginger with it. For most of us, this is a lot to ask, but you just sit down, hold yourself there, and then roll around. I often equate the foam roller to a broadsword and the lacrosse ball to a scalpel. The broadsword is going to get the most bang for your buck. It's going to cover a wide area all at the same time. The scalpel is going to get into those real tight spots. You're going to find where the real business is with this guy. So depending on how brave you are or how new to this you are, you're going to start with your foam roller and then build up over time to doing it with this guy. So that's my recommendation. The next thing is your hamstrings. Hamstrings are also, like, combined with the glutes, they come right down into here and the back of your thigh there, those are your hamstrings. Those are also a big part of the deadlift. If you're not engaging your glutes and you're not engaging your hamstrings, you're not deadlifting properly. So we want to make sure they're prepped properly. A good way to do that with your foam roller is just kind of getting yourself up. It's going to require a little bit of support from the arms to do this, but just roll back and forth, hitting the inside, hitting the middle, hitting the outside, kind of getting it a little bit into the region of the IT band. That can get tacked down pretty heavy. You might want to roll over the back of the knees a little bit. This is where the calves and the hamstrings overlap, so you might want to hit that. You can do this too with a lacrosse ball. However, hard to do on the floor. You just can't really get the same kind of pressure here. I generally will sit in a chair or on a box, somewhere where my feet are usually just flat on the ground with my knees at 90, or a little bit higher. If I'm a little higher up and my feet are dangling, that's okay. You don't want to have it where your knees are up above, 90 degrees right there, because that's going to be, you're not going to get as much pressure on the ball, and so you're not going to get as much benefit. But once you're sitting, and if I get myself set up here, I take my ball, I just place it under my hamstring right there, and then from here, I can just extend my knee out. Now, depending on how tight you are, or what region you happen to be in, you may not be able to extend it very far, and that's totally cool. Don't try to force it, but sit up tall, tilt the pelvis forward, that pulls the hips back, gets a little more tension on the hamstrings, and then just extend the leg out and back about 50 times on each side. And I'm gonna move the ball after a set of 5 or 10, and just look for those really tight spots. A great place to go with this is right up under your sit bone, right at the hamstring insertion into your pelvis. That's a tough area to get to with anything but this technique. I guarantee you the first couple of times you do it, you'll find some stuff that you had no idea was there. Some tightness and restriction that really needs to be dealt with. So that's the hamstrings. Again, like the back squat, the deadlift requires some ankle mobility. Because when you get set up in that deadlift position at the bottom, obviously my ankles need to flex. So you can spend a little bit of time with your lacrosse ball, working the bottom of the foot. Soles of the feet are kind of crucial here because some tightness can develop in them. And that can radiate up the chain to ankles, knees, etc., calves. So a little bit of time here, doesn't have to be a great deal, but a little bit of time here before and after a deadlift session is going to do wonders for your ankle mobility. You can also throw your leg up on the foam roller and spend a little bit of time working the calves, working that Achilles heel. So we're kind of mashing that up, getting it nice and loose, finding those tight spots where maybe you've got some muscle adhesions to your lower leg bones. Maybe you've got a big old knot in your calf because you run, half marathons or 5Ks on a regular basis. Really spend some time here working the back of the legs. This is a frequently ignored area. Oddly enough, and a lot of runners do not do this as regularly as they should. And if you ask somebody to go ahead and deadlift at a heavy enough weight, lack of mobility in the ankles can be a factor. It's going to affect how your knees get, what position your knees get into. It's going to affect where you can get your hips, which is going to affect how flat your back can be in the deadlift. So spend some time working the ankles and the calves. Next thing you want to focus on, upper back. Like the back squat, if you watch the back squat video, I talked about how we need to be able to keep a nice upright posture with a flat back while we're loaded on our back for the back squat. You also need to do the same for picking up with the deadlift. You need to be able to pull the chest up, keep the back nice and taut, very flat as you're lifting. If you're rounded, your spine isn't in its most rigid, strongest position. And so you need to be prepped to be able to do that. Most of us, because we sit so much, have trouble with it. But the foam roller can really help you here with this. So with the foam roller, what I'll do is I will just lay back. The lowest I would go is bottom of the rib cage. With this particular technique, don't go below that. You want the support of the rib cage to help you with this because of the weight you're putting on the foam roller and the lack of support up and down the back. So bottom of the rib cage, slowly roll up to the shoulders and back down. Spend a couple of minutes doing this, making a couple of passes. If I find a spot like this that's particularly tight, I'm going to slow down, stay here for a little bit, and do a few slow passes. If it starts to feel good, then I'll move on. If it doesn't start to feel good, I may address it later. Or if it's not going to be too detrimental to my lift, I'm going to spend more time afterwards focusing on it, whether I have a little bit more time after my weight training session. Getting into this area is going to help allow you to be more upright. It's going to help improve your posture, which is going to improve your deadlift position, which is going to improve your deadlift numbers. It's a win all the way around. And if you really want to get into something like the traps, because what we don't often think about is that your arms are just holding a barbell, but you're engaging up here in your traps and your upper back. So it doesn't hurt to touch on this with your lacrosse ball. What I would do, just lay back, put the ball under my shoulder, and then find out, find that tight spot in there and just sort of stick on it for, a minute or two if you have the time. Afterwards, this is going to be really good. I guarantee you will find, if not two, at least one knot in your traps. There's got to be something in there. We've all got them. I don't think I've met anybody who trains regularly, especially weight training, who doesn't have something going on in their traps. So that's a huge one. And then the other one, the last thing I would probably recommend, just sort of as an aside, if you're pressed for time, you don't have to do this. It's not crucial to your deadlift, but the hands are a biggie here. We don't pay enough attention to our hands and taking care of them. But you really should, because in a lot of this stuff, deadlifting, pressing, all that stuff, you're gripping a lot. And the muscles in your hands can get really tight. So a real quick thing you can do is either to take your lacrosse ball, place it on a surface, and then just roll on it. Kind of like with the feet. You just place your hand down, and then just roll across. I guarantee you'll find some real sensitive areas there. If you don't have a lacrosse ball and you want to do something for this, you can also do a little self-massage. I like to do this, if I'm just sitting around without much to do, waiting in line at the post office or something. Who goes to the post office anymore? I know, the grocery store. And then I'll just sort of work into those tight spots. I'll find a real sensitive area, like for me, right around here usually is. So I'll work into there, kind of maybe work the back of the hand a little bit, take the edge of my thumb and run it between the bones in my hand. Just kind of get into those muscles in between my fingers, within my hand. And just work that for a little bit. Like I said, it's not gonna, hold you back from picking up 300 pounds if everything else in your body is lined up to do that. But if you're interested in taking good care of your body, this is a good one to hit. So that's my video for the deadlift, guys. Give that a shot before and after your session and see how you feel. See if you notice a difference after 3 or 4 weeks of doing that. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me. I'll talk to you guys later.